Hello, everyone. My name is Saba Khan. I'm a visual artist based in Lahore, in Pakistan. And today I'll be talking to Stir World about my work and what I'm doing currently and how my work stems into two branches, my own work and the collective that I work with. And I'm really excited to talk to everybody. So growing up in Lahore, we didn't really have much exposure to art. I mean, we didn't have any binales or art galleries or anything as such. You would just maybe see like a few works of Chuktai or Alabaksh because they had done a lot of printing of their work. So it was very widely available. So you would see like prints here and there. But other than that, I think for me, like maybe truck art was like the primary art exhibit for me. So Pakistan is really big on truck art. So we would go on a yearly trip to Murree or to the mountains in Pakistan, and there would be like trucks. You would be like stuck behind a truck for like hours and look at it and admire the artwork. So that was really the only exposure. And then you had the Lahore Museum, and it was like with my father, I used to go there often and going to older parts of Lahore, much like Chandni Chowk, and kind of experiencing different excavations over there and looking at like old buildings. So we didn't really have like a formal structure where you looked at like, went to a museum with your parents on a Sunday or something like how you would have in other countries. But I think those kind of informed my art practice. And then I went to National College of Arts in Lahore. And that really kind of expanded my vocabulary because its setting isn't like in a really interesting part of Lahore where you pass through like the whole of British colonial buildings, and then you reach NCA, and you also next to like all these different markets which artisans are sitting there making works, and which became part of my work eventually. Boston was like kind of like a shock to the system. Like, how can life be so smooth and boring? So it was just too like stagnant for me. Like nothing's really going on. But yeah, so it was like really interesting, like to be like in the center of education where you have Harvard, MIT, and like you would have interesting programmings happening all the time. But it was really not enough like for me to really like I need to be in a gritty place to kind of um, have like this adrenaline rush every day. Like I think we used to that kind of a life where there's something happening all the time and your life can change any second. I think there's so many narratives that you can look at, or even like research that hasn't been tapped into in Pakistan. And so there's just so much material lying over here which you can just explore. And just with the grittiness, like I mean, there isn't so much of a like a strict or like a controlled system here. So you would have like maybe like chaos, and that chaos brings in a lot of creativity. Like people have creative ways of making their shops, or or putting up their kiosk, or like making a little vehicle for themselves. So there's a lot of room for what you would say jugaad, or like innovation, that cheap innovation that we have. And that really, like, I find that really interesting. And I try to bring in like a lot of mistakes in my work. Like, if even if somebody screws up the work, it's just becomes part of it, and you kind of enjoy the mistakes of the artisan and the labor of the hand and the mistakes of the human. It hasn't been. I think people are not interested in art, so we give ourselves too much credit. But we're kind of like under the radar. Like, I mean, people who are in power don't really care much for artists, and they don't take us seriously. And that's why the collective I also formed has this really like a satirical name to it. Pak Khawateen Painting Club, which means the Good Girls Painting Club, because obviously I'm a good girl. I'm not like critiquing anyone. So I don't think anybody expects me to critique them in the first place. And I think the only problem is maybe just getting to these places. Like a lot of these places are not safe, or you need like a lot of permissions, like a whole set of permissions. You have to go through different people. So that's like the challenging part, the bureaucracy of reaching these places. And then, but people don't really care much for art. So I started this collective called Pak Khawateen Painting Club, which means loosely in Urdu, it means Good Girls Painting Club. So it kind of reminds me of when I was growing up in the 80s or 90s. You had these Ikebana clubs, or the gardening club, or the ladies, I don't know, like garden club or something, or tennis club. So women were supposed to do these little hobbies and not really delve into something so deeply. And even when I tell people in Pakistan I'm an artist, the first thing I get is, "Oh, my mother is also an artist," or "My wife is also an artist." So we're not really taken seriously, which is also like a really big advantage, because you can get away with a lot, like as I also previously mentioned. This was at like 2018. It was a time where there was the mega dams were coming back. Like we first had the mega dams in the 60s and 70s after negotiations with India, and where we had to give water rights of two rivers to India, and got back two mega dams in return, which India and the World Bank paid for. So this whole thing came back full circle. With in 2018, there was suddenly in 2016 there was a sudden report that Pakistan is going to run out of water, but it wasn't clear like what kind of water we're going to run out of. Are we going to be running out of aquifers, or are we going to be running out of glaciers or rivers, or what was it? So, and after that, immediately there was this whole nationalistic rhetoric to start rebuilding mega dams and storing water. And anybody who challenged it was going to be a traitor of the nation. So I thought maybe if we go as like benign, women who are interested in painting landscapes, and we go to all these sites that they propose for dams, and really see what's happening on the ground, because there wasn't much news. So we marked. So I invited women artists who I had previously worked with, and so they had either come to the residency, or I had collaborated on an exhibition with them, or I had taught with them, or they were colleagues in some capacity. So I asked them if they would like to join, and we went on this journey, which was like I think maybe for 2 weeks, and we went from dam to dam. Like each dam, we would stop over and look at what was happening over there, and what was around the peripheries, which was going to be damaged once the dam came up. So it was like a really extraordinary experience, because some places there was nothing there, and the media had not reported like that. And in some places there was a lot of construction and Chinese presence, but it wasn't. The media had really like given a very dark picture of it. But the Chinese engineering company was super smart about it. Like they were so welcoming to us. They were extremely hospitable. They invited us over for lunch and were really transparent about the whole process and their building site. So each experience was very different. And then the collective kind of took off. We like got more projects, and so we now did our third expedition just a few weeks ago. Yes. So recently we decided to go on the source of the rivers, which are the glaciers. And what most people don't know is that Pakistan is part of the third pole. Like there's Arctic pole and Antarctic, and then there's the third pole, which has the most ice in the world, and Pakistan is a part of it. So we went to 4 of the glaciers just 2 weeks ago. So I mean, these places were like extremely picturesque, but we were not able to find too much literature on it, because it's still supposed to be a disputed area. The Gilgit-Baltistan area is still disputed between India and Pakistan. So it's kind of like a gray area. Even if you have to go research there, you need like a lot of permissions, and you need to like take permissions to do photography. There's a lot of military presence over there, and but this required a lot of trekking as well. So it was a very physically strenuous trip, because each day we were trekking a lot, and if you had to get to the glacier's snout, you had to walk a few hours, which was like completely like uphill. And sometimes you would not know what you're going to find, because the glacier, like I did a recce trip last year, but this time one of the glaciers had completely like changed this time I came. And it was like this amazing experience. Like once you walk up to the glacier, it's like almost reaching like a big beast or like a giant, and all of them look completely different from each other. And it's like this beast sitting there, and like with water gushing out of it, and they you can like even hear cracks happening all the time. Like when you see the sunlight falling over it, it starts cracking, and you can like hear the cracks and the boulders rocking down, coming down. Um, but it's also an area which is studied a lot, but that those studies are not really public as such, because they don't want to give out all the information, because it's close to the border again. And but I think those things will change eventually, because of climate change and how it's affecting everybody. One of the towns we visited had already been flooded in May, so we visited them, and we thought like maybe it's not a good time to go there, but they really wanted the story out. So a lot of people really want to be heard. Like that's what we realize. Like a lot of these groups or small communities who get affected by these precarious situations, they really want to be heard. It was like a coincidence. Like last year, 2020, we did an expedition which is going to be shown at the Sharjah Art Biennale. And so we did go to a community who had already experienced flooding in 2010. So flooding is not something new to Pakistan. Like we've experienced flooding maybe like after every 10 years. So there was a massive flooding in 2020, and the small village I went to, they were telling like harrowing stories about how they were stuck in trees for days until like a private organization came to rescue them. And now they were complaining how they didn't have any water, and all their water was being usurped by a landlord who was upstream from them. So it was really disturbing how these people were completely sidelined and nobody was interested in them. And we spotted so many ghost schools which were being operated by different NGOs. God knows where the money comes from and how it's being spent. So this was like a disaster in the making already. And but flooding has been there for like centuries. Like even Mohenjo-daro and Harappa are built on floodplains, and that's how a lot of the indigenous farming used to happen on floodplains. So that's like a natural cycle as well. But it's also like a lot of us who are to blame. Like why haven't the elite in Karachi, why didn't they do anything before, or after the 2010 floods, why didn't we learn anything? Or there's been a lot of deforestation up in the north as well, which people don't want to address. A lot of hotels are up near glaciers, which are owned by very influential people. So what are they doing there? So everybody is complicit in all of this. And I wouldn't say like I was like kind of like I don't know, like I was predicting this, but it didn't surprise me. Yeah, so I see myself more of somebody who's archiving, like I'm archiving these conversations with people, with communities, even spaces, like what did they look like. So I see myself more of like somebody who's like a recorder, or like somebody's recording, like okay, like this is what's happening here, this is what's happening here. But I think right now we're like going through such a huge economic crisis and a political crisis, and I mean, I would like to believe that it would make a change. I mean, that's why you keep going and you keep making work, because some you kind of believe that okay, like I want to listen to, like for me, like I want to listen to all these voices, or I want to like see what's going on. Like it's my own curiosity, and I'm like a record keeper. Like maybe this archive will help somebody like make future works, although also because we don't have any archives like in South Asia, all our archives are gone. Like I mean, they're sitting in the British library or the British museum. So I think it's maybe for like people 20 years from now, like maybe they'll look at the hard drives and make something out of it. But I think right now we have like it's too many problems on our plate. Yes, so at Art Jameel, we were so we always have like a 2 weekly or like a bi-monthly conversation on WhatsApp, because not all of us from the club live in Lahore, and we were like brainstorming on what to do, and all of us work in government education institutions, and one of our frustrations is the bureaucratic system, or like so. So we thought like okay, like what if somebody like the government actually proposes a museum, what would actually happen? And hypothetically, it would not, maybe we were predicting that it would not ever take off, because a lot of these projects are in the pipeline and something goes wrong somewhere, and then they kind of never take off. So and or they end up being these white elephants. So we thought we would write letters, and by this time, because we had already done a few expeditions together and some work, so we knew each other's skill sets by now, and we gave each other like a department. So I'm like Department of Implementation, Director General of Implementation, and somebody else is like Director General of Protocol. So we've all become Director Generals of some unknown departments, and we're writing letters to each other, telling each other to make this museum, but it never really takes off, because one of them is really interested in what menus to keep, and which VIPs to call and how to entertain the VIPs, and somebody else and ends up embezzling the money, and then there's like a protest against us, and we decide to shut it down. So we kind of replicated, or we really like some of the letters, we just picked up like language of some of these government projects, which where it did happen, like they were like people protesting against them, or like they embezzled money or something. So we picked up like directly like language, or like plagiarized their words. So the whole idea was to recreate that whole governmental process, also that we experience on a daily basis, and we what we experience also before going to an expedition, like because those monumental projects like dams and barrages are controlled by the government or the army. So when you go into these spaces, the kind of things that you have to do to get permissions, or to speak to them, or look at their aesthetics. Like there's like particular aesthetic of the office, which is so ubiquitous, like with the green felt. I don't know which color felt they use in India, but we have green felt here, and the glass top, and like, there's always this mirror on the side with the little brush or a comb. So if somebody wants to comb their hair before a meeting, they can quickly do that. So kind of like really amusing ourselves with the whole bureaucratic language and the bureaucracy. So the bureaucracy is also really like a big interest for us, like in how it operates. So now we're working on the glaciers, and we're on the in the production phase of it, and we're going to be launching it in December. And this time we collaborated with another collective from London called Lumen Studios, and they're also a female collective. And other than that, we're also very excited to be part of the Sharjah Biennale 15, which is going to be in February in 2023. And that's where we're going to go next. And we're very excited. about that.